In the year 1665, the Spanish throne passed to the sickly Charles II, a man who made even Frankenstein look attractive. His health problems prompted contemporaries to refer to him as El Hechizado, or the Bewitched. It is traditionally held that Charles II's severe mental and physical impairments were a consequence of inbreeding, something that the Habsburg royals did frequently to ensure that wealth and influence remained in the family. Although the Habsburgs weren't the only ones to partake in such a practice, they are the only royal family to have an inbreeding-induced deformity named after them, the Habsburg jaw. One of the Habsburgs' infamous disabilities was infertility, and consequently, when the Spanish King Charles II died at the age of 38, he still lacked an heir. A coalition of European powers had long been devising plans to divide the Spanish Empire's vast holdings across the continent, and the time had come to put those plans into action. However, there was one obstacle that the coalition had to surmount. Charles II had stated in his will that his kingdom should be left to Philip of Anjou, the grandson of the famed French monarch Louis XIV, also known as the Sun King. Louis followed Charles' will and recognized Philip as the new king of Spain. Not so fast was the Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I's reply. The emperor refused to recognize Philip of Anjou and instead laid claim to the Spanish throne on behalf of his son, Archduke Karl VI. Noble Spaniards, I hereby proclaim that my son, Archduke Karl VI of Austria, will be your rightful sovereign and ruler of the Spanish Empire. He shall henceforth be called Carlos.
Okay.
The Spanish people were not fans of this new Austrian pretender, and a momentous clash was brewing. On one side stood France and Spain, aided by Portugal, Hungary, Savoy, and a handful of German principalities, and on the other stood the Grand Alliance, comprised of England, Scotland, the Dutch Republic, Austria, Prussia, and Hanover. It wasn't long before the two alliances prepared for war. From the onset of the War of the Spanish Succession, coalition forces were on the offensive. In 1703, a decisive naval victory at Vigo Bay was won, which prompted Portugal to flip sides that same year, opening a new front in Iberia. Around the same time, Savoy also flipped sides, further pressuring French and Spanish holdings in Italy. Between 1704 and 1708, this trend of aggression continued, as the alliance won victory after victory in Central Europe. The military prowess of John Churchill, whose victory at Blenheim forced Bavaria out of the war, and Prince Eugene of Savoy allowed coalition forces to fully contain France. These victories even included two brief occupations of Madrid and successful occupations of Barcelona and Valencia. But Philip of Anjou remained firmly seated on the throne, in part as a result of his popularity with the Spanish people. But massive war expenditures gradually took a toll on the Spanish and French treasuries. By 1708, both sides were in a deadlock. The French were completely forced out of northern Italy and Spain out of southern Italy. The British Royal Navy also enjoyed naval supremacy in the Mediterranean, even seizing Spanish Gibraltar and Minorca. But France itself remained relatively untouched, and no lasting breakthroughs were made in Spain. Most of the participating countries wanted the war to come to a close, but France wouldn't budge. Louis's decision to continue fighting paid off. Why? Because in 1705, the Holy Roman Emperor Leopold died, passing the throne to his eldest son Joseph, who then also died in 1711. This meant that Archduke Karl VI was now Holy Roman Emperor, the man the Grand Alliance was fighting to place on the Spanish throne. This, needless to say, complicated things, as no one in Europe wanted to see Karl VI accumulate so much power at the head of both the Holy Roman and the Spanish empires. An important thing to remember is that the Grand Alliance was attempting to establish a balance of power on the continent so that no dynasty had too much control. However, with no figurehead to rally behind, the Grand Alliance soon collapsed, allowing the French to negotiate for more favorable terms, but they still needed to make concessions. Philip of Anjou remained on the Spanish throne, but several measures were taken to limit French power, including the transfer of territories and trade privileges to the Allies. Among the territories were parts of Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, Hudson Bay, St. Kitts, Gibraltar, and Minorca, all ceded to the British. The war empowered the British in other ways as well. By the time it ended, Britain had the largest navy in the world. Additionally, the war significantly weakened the Dutch, who had been one of, if not the greatest obstacle to British mercantile supremacy. Austria, meanwhile, did gain parts of the Netherlands, and was able to secure its hold over Italy and Hungary. During that